Tonight, commercial banking fees set to decrease. We've got reaction from consumers who say it's still not enough. Also, fury in the tropics and NEMA is on alert. Will the Bahamas be impacted? And later, bus drivers in Eleuthera strike. We'll tell you why. This is Eyewitness News.
Eyewitness News brought to you by Flow Evo, powered by BTC. Flow Evo is here.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Janae Noel Ferguson in for Kendino Knowles, who's taking some time off. Thanks for joining us. Off the top tonight, a small victory for consumers. Those high banking fees are about to decrease, according to Labor Minister Dion Folks. He revealed today that following long discussions with the Clearing Banks Association and widespread discontent among the public because of their ongoing high fees, they have agreed to cut those costs. But consumers say they need to take it even further.
Goes to Royal Bank, and I don't have an account there. And I thought it would be a $10 fee, I wouldn't mind, but they charged me $16 to pay out and get my check cash. And I was inside the bank over an hour. The guy was so slow on the elderly folks line, that was terrible.
The stories are similar from consumer to consumer who utilize commercial banks. High fees just to cash a check and poor customer service. But Labor Minister Dion Folks says that's about to change. Folks reveal that banks have now agreed to lower some of their service fees.
They have agreed to embark upon a listing of all of the bank fees, or the minimum, the main fees that the banks charges.
But what was the reason for the fee increase in the first place?
Well, the big thing was maximizing trying to address the lack of business in the lending part of the banking industry and how they can make up in terms of the loss of revenue from lending. That was the main reason.
And while the change is welcomed by many, consumers say it's simply not enough. How does that make you feel?
Well, it all depends on what they're charging. Even though they change it, is the price right? What they're charging?
I think that wherever a service is provided, we should not be paying a fee for that service, because a person is actually rendering a service, and that fee should be a part of a bank's capital funding towards, customer service. I'm very happy to hear of that.
Shadow Minister for Finance Chester Cooper says the high fees also having a negative impact on those struggling to make ends meet.
What we'd like to see ideally is banks expand their credit, help to grow the economy, and look to see generally how they can be more participative in terms of entrepreneurial lending, in terms of really helping to advance the country rather than being we want them really to be a part of the solution. And at the moment, they've generally been a part of the problem.
Now, Folks predicts that the banking sector will become more competitive. He urged the public to be smart in their decision making.
And I encourage people, you're not married to a particular bank. And if you are, get a divorce. Go to the bank that offers you the best possible arrangement.
Well, still talking news on the economy since Financial Services, Trade and Immigration Minister Brent Simonette announced that all submissions to recommence the World Trade Organization or WTO's negotiations have been put in place. The Bahamas Chamber of Commerce and Employers Confederation CEO Edison Sumner says he has high hopes for the move, as the chamber has been intricately involved since day one. Now, Sumner telling Eyewitness News today that the move has been long in the making, and the chamber will be monitoring government's movements very closely.
The government's plans for the accession process, we are engaging with them in dialogue to see where we can offer any suggestions or recommendations or reviews of the process. That is something that's very important for the private sector, because, like we said before, if you're going to negotiate on the private sector's behalf, then it's only reasonable that the private sector has some engagement in the process. So we think Mr. Lang is a good choice for the chief negotiator position, and we're looking forward to having some further discussions with him as well and his team going forward.
In other news tonight, Health Minister Dr. Dwayne Sands confirming today that Hospital Administrator Mary Walker has been placed on administrative leave. Now, while Sands could not give much details for the leave, he did say the reasons were not related to any financial matters. He did, however, disclose that executives are now reviewing the hospital's management team.
She's on administrative leave.
So it wasn't a disciplinary suspension?
She's on administrative leave for the management of the hospital. I don't want to conflate issues. At the end of the day, what we try to do is make sure that the right persons are in the right place at the right time in order to provide services to the Bahamian public. Staff member is due process. And so if you're on administrative leave, there's obviously a process that is followed so that we adhere to the human resources policies and procedures. And I think that's about as much as I'd like to say about that.
While all of this unfolded, Sands says, as the hospital is undergoing extensive renovations. He also spoke to the challenges now being experienced in the hospital's dialysis unit.
Enough time in the Princess Margaret Hospital dialysis unit, and so some people have had their total dialysis time reduced. Sometimes people only get 2.5 hours, sometimes people get 3 hours.
And the prime is 4?
The typical is 3 to 4 hours. And so these are real problems. We don't have the dialysis nurses to provide the level of care that we would like to provide, and yet we're mandated to soldier on.
Well, we're now at the peak of this year's hurricane season. There has been 4 active systems moving throughout the Atlantic, and according to officials, the possibility of being hit by one major storm is still high. During a press conference with media today at the National Emergency Management Agency, or NEMA, officials said that the odds are pretty much stacked against us, considering the increase of traveling systems. Our April Sands has the details tonight.
With 3 systems likely to develop into hurricanes in the Atlantic and one already confirmed as a Category 4, Bahamas Chief Meteorologist Basil Dean and NEMA's Director Captain Stephen Russell confirmed with Eyewitness News Team today that the Bahamas should be prepared for one of the most interesting hurricane seasons yet.
I would say is that the probability is pretty high when you have the number of systems that we do have, and there's more to come. There's always that likelihood that one of them could impact us. We have 2 named, well, really 3 named systems. The first one would be Helene, which is in the far eastern Atlantic. That particular hurricane we don't anticipate will be a problem to us here in the Bahamas. And then we have Isaac, which is now a tropical storm. It is expected to intensify to a hurricane once again as it takes aim for the Lesser Antilles. And then we have Florence, which is expected to move just between the Bahamas and Bermuda. This one is a very powerful hurricane. It's a Category 4. It's back in winds of 140 miles per hour. The good news is we don't expect any direct impact.
Following the devastation of Hurricane Matthew and Irma to the nation's capital and Family Islands, Russell admits there were many lessons learned and suggested there needs to be a more rigid protocol for the country in times of crisis.
Mandatory evacuations that has to come in play at some point in time. Again, that's a legislative decision. They have to make it mandatory that a person's refusing to leave a district when we know a major hazard is approaching. Okay, let's sign a document that I certified I will remain here. We've seen the news where persons from Ragged Island saying they're not going to leave next time, okay, if the government tells them to leave. Again, I said common sense must prevail.
Russell also noted that the challenge remains with persons living in Ragged Island, as that island has been deemed inhabitable by the Prime Minister since Hurricane Irma. Residents, according to Russell, are questioning when they'll get that term removed. But Russell admits the sad truth is it's no time soon.
Unless the basic infrastructure is in place, key persons are in place, more so. In fact, when I went there last, they're asking for how soon the doctor can come back with a nurse. Okay, so in terms of a nurse and a doctor, your police, social services, school for the kids who are there. Unless those basic institutions or structures in place, it's hard for the government to sanction the place livable, okay?
April Sands, Eyewitness News.
While the Bahamas Consulate Office in Atlanta is also monitoring the progress of Hurricane Florence, which is expected to make landfall in the areas of Georgia as well as North and South Carolina this week. Students are being asked to contact their closest office to receive direct communications from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. That's pertaining to warnings, potential evacuations, shelter locations, and emergency support. Students are also urged to message with their names, emails, telephone contacts, and their college or university. Well, the new school semester began last week, Monday, but there has, however, been a series of hiccups which have plagued the start of the new school year, not only here in New Providence, but in the Family Islands as well. Today, bus drivers on Eleuthera were up in arms over months of non-payment from government, even after they've rendered their services. Our Theo Seeley was in Eleuthera today. He has the details tonight.
School bus drivers in Central and South Eleuthera say enough is enough. According to the transportation providers, they haven't been paid by government since early May.
Please send the money on time to pay us when we bus. On time, okay? Every month they should send the money. I owe people money, I owe people fuel and different things, Need the money, man.
So it's affecting your daily life?
Exactly.
It seems like if we don't take a stand, then education can keep doing this to us.
Now, if you do not receive your monies today, if you do not receive your monies tomorrow, how long do bus drivers intend to stage this protest for?
As long as they don't pay, we don't go on the road.
Now into the second week of the new school year, they've pulled their services. Parents resorted to dropping their kids to school this morning, which meant that there would be an abnormal amount of vehicular traffic. Inspector Joseph Oldham says officers on the island got a heads up about the demonstration, so they were prepared.
We expected an increase of vehicular traffic and pedestrian traffic in Eleuthera. So this morning, it was our intention just to ensure that everyone slows down, as we may have a lot of children, pedestrians heading to school.
One mother, Shakia Emmanuel, told Eyewitness News that parents resorted to carpooling Tuesday morning. She says she supports the decision made by bus drivers to take a stand.
And it's unfair to the bus drivers because at the end of the day, our children have to ride the bus, and if the bus is not secure, then our children is not secure, and it's not safe for the children, because if they're not being taken care of, then they can take care of our children. So what's left for our children to do? They still need their education.
So we traveled to Savannah Sound to have a chat with the district superintendent for North and Central Eleuthera, Myrtle McPhee, and she confirmed that there is some truth to the rumors that bus drivers have not been paid. In fact, this is not the first time that this has happened. Drivers encountered this same problem back in 2017 when they were not paid at the start of the school semester. So now that they've taken an affirmative stance to stop their services, McPhee is hopeful that monies will be released from the capital in short order.
McPhee declined appearing on camera Tuesday, but according to the disgruntled drivers, she's held meetings to confirm that monies are on the way.
I spoke with her yesterday. I was in a meeting with her all day yesterday, and she told me that September money and October money is there. But that ain't the money we're waiting for. We're waiting for the arrest money. That's the money we're looking for, not the money what there for this month and next month. That ain't helping us none. I have bills to pay. I have bus drivers to pay. I have fuel to pay. I need the money.
Up to News Time Tuesday, Ministry of Education officials provided no conclusive answers as to when the unpaid monies will be made available to school bus drivers on the island. Reporting for Eyewitness News from Central Eleuthera, I'm Theo Seeley.
Great job there, Theo. Now, we have been made to understand by the bus drivers we spoke to today that educational officials telephoned them immediately after our news team left the island. Now, the drivers claimed that the educational officials will have their monies available tomorrow morning. It's a story we, of course, will continue to follow. Well, the government's appointed committee to review the heads of agreement with Oban Energies is still awaiting a technical report to complete its assessment to Cabinet. Labor Minister Dion Folks, who heads that committee, telling reporters outside of Cabinet today, while the investor remains committed to the deal, the committee is unsure of when that report will be complete.
We are still awaiting the technical report from the Oban Technical Advisory Committee. It's taking a little longer than I had anticipated. I have received a draft. It's a fairly comprehensive document, but I've still not received the final document.
Anything?
We are in talks in good faith with the principals of Oban, and we intend to remain in talks with them. If we can amend the heads of agreement to the satisfaction of the government, then that would be the best outcome. They have agreed to enter talks pursuant to the terms of the agreement, which makes provision for amendments to the heads of agreement.
Well, in news from the Crime Beat tonight, police need your help in finding wanted suspect Gerald Alexander Russell, also known as Jerry, for fraud by false pretenses. Jerry's last known address is Freeport, Grand Bahama. Police advise that you approach him with extreme caution and care. Grand Bahama police are also on the hunt for murder suspect Omar Marino Penn, also known as Punch. He stands 5 feet 9 inches tall. He's of medium build, and police are also advising to approach him with extreme caution. Finally, police in Abaco are looking for Rashad Ashton Fox of Sandyport, Abaco, for a shooting missing persons case. Eyewitness News understands that someone was shot on the island, but the shooter or the victim was never found. Now, Fox stands at about 6 feet tall, weighing 190 pounds. If you have any information about his whereabouts or any of the other wanted suspects, you're asked to contact police at 919 or 328-TIPS. Well, still to come tonight, Eleuthera youth are speaking out against the mega development proposed for Lighthouse Point. We've got that also. Summer is over, but mosquitoes are still a factor. We'll tell you why. But first, here's a check on tonight's weather forecast. You're looking at live pictures over the Sydney Poitiers Bridge, where the temperatures is right around 84 degrees with an expected dip to 78. This is Eyewitness News. Welcome back. Well, the Chamber of Commerce CEO Edison Sumner says there will be another meeting to further discuss the proposal of Disney's project at Lighthouse Point in Eleuthera. The follow-up meeting will be held in Orlando, Florida. But since the first proposal, the Lighthouse Point has stirred up some controversy with residents who feel the takeover will block locals from visiting the site. Sumner explains that they're taking their discussions very seriously, and he stressed their focus is to allow for Bahamians to benefit from the proposal, but he explains in future the discussions need to be more based on an investment policy.
No matter who the project proponents are, I think any project that comes into the country, whether it's a hotel development, cruise companies, other real estate developers, etc., there has to be and ought to be a very strong component of Bahamians' integration into those projects, right? And that is not only in the terms of creating jobs, right? We've got to look at sustainable development plans and policies. We've got to see how policies that are being, or plans, proposals that are being submitted to the country, how do they line up with the government's own investment policy for the country?
Well, students of the Central Eleuthera High School are also protesting the project. They created a petition on SaveLighthousePoint.com. They say they're aiming for 25,000 signatures. They explain to us why they're eager to protest this deal.
It's not just letting Disney come over and having the cruise line, which is fun, and we understand that point. But we are trying to save what is there and preserve the natural habitat that is there.
We as a people really want the benefits from Lighthouse Beach to stay in the country that it's located in, and not for a cruise line to come and destroy the natural habitat and take away the homes of so many marine animals.
But we just don't want only people on Disney cruise lines to enjoy the beach. We all want to join. We all want to enjoy the jewel, the beauty of the beach, the crystal clear waters, the pink sands.
Well, with the contractors bill now enacted, the Bahamian Contractors Association wants to ensure that all those practicing in the field are brought up to standard for consumers and for their own protection. Sean Michael Clark, in charge of education and training for the association, says this begins the process toward regularization.
And what that means is you would have to show competencies academically, proof that you've actually worked in an industry for some time, and that is evaluated by a board, and they make a decision, and the board is comprised of members recommended by the BCA and selected by the minister and written down by the registrar, and that board decides who gets the license. The BCA facilitates, in a sense, the BCA facilitates contractors with the tools to help them to make that process go smoothly for them.
Well, Clark added that while contractors are often blamed for shoddy work, the training will ensure that they know the ins and outs of the industry and provisions for recourse.
We believe that a better educated, a better equipped contractor always benefits the consumer. Contractors that know the ins and outs of construction practice, what is expected of them as a general contractor, that's always beneficial to the owner. In addition, the Act has a provision for a compensation scheme. Generally, what happens in construction, projects have bonds that act as insurances for the owner in the cases of shoddy work. There's a compensation scheme built into the Act that general contractors are supposed to contribute to. So in the event that a contractor defaults, the consumer has an avenue to protect themselves.
Well, finally in news tonight, today marks the beginning of Mosquito Awareness Week, and although it has been a relatively quiet summer of mosquito-borne diseases, the Ministry of Public Health and Environment is partnering along with the Bahamas Red Cross and Let's Do It Bahamas to bring awareness to Bahamians. Now, the theme for this week is Small Bite, Big Threat, and Director of Public Health, Dr. Pearl McMillan, explains the message behind this week.
Mosquito Awareness Week is about raising the awareness of the need for continuous vigilance as it relates to making sure that your surroundings are free of all things, all possible breeding sites. We won't have mosquitoes if they couldn't breed. In particular, the mosquito we're talking about that lives in and around your immediate surroundings, like your house, the school, the church. We have to be very, very vigilant.
And coming up in sports, Randy Smith is off the top with the latest. Good evening, Randy.
After a brief hiatus, one of the country's premier pro boxers is back in action. We have the latest details coming up in Eyewitness Sports. Good evening, everyone. I'm Randy Smith, and welcome to Eyewitness News Sports. We begin tonight with some boxing news. After a full year away from the ring, Toriano Johnson yesterday announced he'll be returning to competition in November. Johnson will take on American Christopher Pearson. Johnson has agreed to provide Eyewitness News with an update on his training in the coming days. Johnson was also one of nearly 100 athletes waiting on the government's subvention issue to be. Speaking on that subvention policy issue, yesterday athletes in track and field, swimming, soccer, judo, boxing, basketball, bodybuilding, tennis, and cycling were all paid between $12,000 to $34,000 to assist with training and development. Director of Sports Tim Munning said that the government tried to make the process as inclusive as possible, although it was impossible to cover everyone deemed to be elite by their respective federations.
The sports policy speaks to who's eligible to go on subvention. Track and field, based on the existing policy, has the most number of athletes qualifying. So it talks to winning a medal or winning an Olympic medal, winning a world championship medal. So when you look at the number of athletes in track and field that have achieved that qualifying standard, a number of the athletes are in. Make no mistake, the subvention program subvents athletes across a number of sports, not only track and field. It's track and field, swimming, tennis, boxing, basketball, volleyball, bodybuilding. So the program does meet the needs of athletes across a number of sports. Now, how those athletes, how those federations in this new policy design, how will they are tasked with identifying what will they use as their criteria to recognize an athlete. Track and field is pretty straightforward, but what will bodybuilding use to say, well, this person is an elite athlete? Winning a national championship, does that make them a national athlete, or do they go internationally and win something on a stage? The subvention policy, as I mentioned, is a limited fund.
In baseball news, Jazz Chisholm and the Rawhide advances the California League Championship Series in Single-A Advanced Baseball. They closed out a 5-game series with a 3-0 win over the Stockton Ports last night. They begin the championship series today against the Los Angeles Quakes. That game is set for 7:30 p.m. Also in baseball news, Lucius Fox and the Montgomery Biscuits were eliminated in the Southern League semifinals. The Biscuits dropped the final game of that series 11-7 to the Jackson Generals. Well, that does it for us in sports, but stay tuned. Eyewitness News continues in a moment. I'm Randy Smith. Have a great evening.
You're watching Eyewitness News.
Welcome back. Coming up and beyond the headlines with Clint Watson, a Bahamian journalist, recounts being first on the scene covering the 9/11 attacks in New York. The now journalist turned professor at the University of the Bahamas remembers the chilling details of that day. That's coming up on Beyond the Headlines that starts right after this. Well, that does it for us here at Eyewitness News. It's certainly been a pleasure having you in our company tonight. On behalf of the entire news team, I'm Janae Noel Ferguson saying good night.